From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Speaking with the Enemy.
Well, we're still about 15 minutes away from kickoff between the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Montreal Alouettes. This is Tiger Cats pregame presented by Active Green and Ross. And as you heard, we are now speaking with the enemy. The enemy just happens to be Marco Breuillette. He's a radio analyst for the Montreal Alouettes. And, Marco, when you look at this game for the Alouettes, they're 2-4. They got the Red Blacks kind of chomping at the back, and they got the Ticats ahead of them, and then the Argos. This is a big game for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Alouettes are embarking on a 5-game stretch, or they did last week on a 5-game stretch against Eastern opponents that I think is really going to help shape the playoff picture as we continue moving forward in this shortened season. And they already dropped the first of those 5 games against the Argos last week. So very important for them to come into Tim Hortons Field today and try and get a win against these hot Ticats.
Very similar stretch coming up with the Ticats, and they've already started. There's been some changes on the coaching staff and front office. Do you expect to see, a defense that hasn't shown anything on film yet, a completely different overhaul in the defensive structure, or how do you see it playing out with the new changes?
Well, that change kind of caught me a bit off guard because I felt that since the beginning of the season, the Alouettes, 4-man pass rush had actually improved compared to what we had seen in 2019. One of their biggest struggles during that 2019 season was getting pressure on the quarterback, especially when not bringing any added men to the rush, like linebackers or defensive backs. But so far this season, that looked like it was an area that they had improved on. And so it makes me kind of wonder if perhaps there was something going on behind the scenes. But all the coaching changes aside, I would like to see the Alouettes able to put a bit more pressure on opposing quarterbacks. We saw it in Toronto. Whenever they gave McLeod Bethel-Thompson too much time, he was able to stretch the field and find some open receivers. And I also would like to see them get away from that 3-man pass rush. They like in second and long situations to have 3 down linemen drop 9 guys in coverage. But you can only do that, when you've got 3 guys who are capable of putting pressure on the quarterback. We saw Winnipeg do it last night with Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson, on each end of that line. Their defense has the ability to make those calls, but until the Alouettes can improve that 3- and 4-man pass rush, I think they need to get away from those defenses in second and long situations.
William Stanback just having an absolutely fantastic season, averaging more than 100 yards per game, coming off back-to-back 100-plus yard games. The only game where he was really shut down was against the Ticats, where he only had 40 yards on 12 carries. How do you feel like they adjust the offense to try and get him kind of more, get him going more here? Because we've seen when he's on and he's playing well, the Alouettes are dangerous. But like I said, we've seen the Ticats shut him down too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Ticats are the only team so far this season that has been able to slow down Will Stanback. So I think it'll have to be a focus for the Alouettes to get him involved early. And if it's not necessarily running inside, because the Ticats front 7 is very stout, led, with Ted Laurent in the middle, Dylan Wynn, and there's that linebacking core with Santos Knox, and obviously Simone Lawrence is coming off a CFL Player of the Month performance. They're going to have to try and establish that run early on, and if not get away from it. You stick with it, or perhaps try and find more ways to get Stanback involved, whether that's releasing him out of the backfield, setting up some screen passes, just finding ways to get the football in his hands because he's such an integral part of the Alouettes offense.
Yeah, that offense has certainly put up some big numbers this year. And how have you seen the development of Vernon Adams Jr. So far this season?
It's been quite frustrating. And because coming into this 2021 season, what I wanted to see was Vernon Adams Jr. take that next step in his decision-making and his consistency. And early on in this season, he showed flashes of having matured as a quarterback, making better decisions, taking care of the football. But every now and then, it's like he forgets all of that, and he takes 2 steps back, and he'll throw a ball, into double coverage where it doesn't need to be thrown. And so I would like to see a lot more consistency out of him. And he also had some accuracy issues in that short to intermediate passing game. A lot of times balls thrown behind receivers, not allowing them to make a play on it, or allowing a DB who may have lost leverage to gain it back, due to an inaccurate throw. So I would like to see Vernon Adams Jr. be more consistent and continue converting those routine plays in order to bring some stability to this offense.
Yeah, I was talking about it with Sean Campbell on the podcast edition of Speaking with the Enemy this week. Of course, your partner in the booth, and he really touched on that, the consistency. And like you said, it's those like 5 to 7 yard like slant passes that really kind of seem to catch him off guard. He just seems to struggle. Do they have to change anything, or is that just something that Vernon Adams is going to have to learn how to do if he's going to want to be kind of the next level here in the CFL elite quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think that's an issue that Vernon Adams Jr. Is going to have to address himself, because the play calling's there, the execution from the other 11 guys on the field is there, but it's just the pass that's slightly off, that's just not there. And you look at a football team that actually leads the league in second down conversions at 55%. No other team in the league above 47%. So I can imagine that if they can hammer down those details and they can get those routine plays done, they could probably push that over the 60% rate.
Weeks back when Hamilton visited Montreal, we spoke a bit about the offensive line and how Jamison was new moving into the center position, and how you said the guards were the mainstays, kind of the anchors of that offensive line. How have you seen the development within that line itself? And we talked a little bit about Tony Washington on the left tackle last time, a former Ticat, and as well as Landon Rice on the right tackle, former Ticat. But specifically on the inside, how do you find those guys are gelling this year, and how's the defensive pressure been up the middle?
I think they've done a fantastic job along that offensive line, giving up the fewest sacks in the CFL so far this season. Now, some of that is due to the escapism and the abilities of Vernon Adams Jr., who on a regular basis we see work his magic to get away from would-be tacklers in the offensive backfield. But that offensive line has done a tremendous job. They're able to run the football, notwithstanding that game about the against the Ticats that we spoke about earlier. But this is a unit that's doing a great job week in, week out, and I expect them to continue growing and gelling along that offensive line as we keep moving forward in this 2021 season.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's the same thing I've been noticing, and that looking back at that last game against the Tiger Cats, there wasn't a lot of pressure up the middle, but what they were doing, what that solid defensive interior, like you mentioned, was doing is kind of plugging all those holes and forcing the bounce out, and the speed of the linebackers for the Ticats was able to rally and not let Stanback get his shoulders north and south. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some type of misdirection or trickery in that offense to have you seen any of that this week, or can you share that information?
Well, we'll keep that close to the vest, but I agree with you. I don't think the traditional zone blocking scheme that the Alouettes have had success with so far this season is going to cut it against this Ticats front. What I would like to see out of them is perhaps some more pulling offensive linemen. They've got a lot of athleticism in that inside three with Jamison, Matt, and Gagnon. So maybe get those guys out in front of Stanback, try and capture the edge, and allow Stanback to build up a head of steam as he gets downfield. Because like you said, last time they played these Ticats, the Ticats were able to stuff those gaps, force Stanback to chop his feet, lose his momentum, and they use the speed of their linebackers to chase him down for short gains or even tackles for loss.
Obviously, the Montreal Alouettes are going to see kind of the Ticats at their Coach Orlando Steinauer called it their most complete this week. How much do you think that's going to throw him off with Jeremiah Masoli, Braylon Addison, and Brandon Banks in the lineup for the Ticats today? Yeah,
it's a little worrisome for that Alouettes defense. I mentioned what the Argos were able to do when their quarterback was given time to find his men downfield. I think this is a much more talented offense that the Ticats have, especially with the return of Breuillette Addison. Brandon Banks makes his way back onto the roster. And obviously the most important part of that offense, Jeremiah Masoli back under center. Not to say that Dave Watford didn't do a great job managing football games and doing some good work for the Ticats, but it wasn't that explosive offense that we're used to seeing when Masoli or Evans is at the helm. So I think it'll be quite a challenge for the Alouettes today if they're not able to get consistent pressure on Masoli and allow Addison and Banks to run wild on the field.
All right, one sentence or less. The Alouettes will win this game if
they can run the football.
Just as easier said than done against this Ticats defense, but great piece there. Marco, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. That's Marco Breuillette. He's a radio analyst for the Montreal Alouettes. Okay, we're still about 10 minutes away from kickoff here. Coming up, we'll have the CarStar keys to victory, and we'll get today's starting lineup. All coming up here on the Ticats Audio Network. You're listening to Tiger Cats pregame, presented by Active Green and Ross on the Ticats Audio Network.